Welcome to the Driving Forward podcast. It is it's November 14th. Whether you're joining us live or listening boy, I'm whiffing this I don't ever whiff the start of this thing. So I must be thinking of something else. So we're going to just start over. So welcome to the Driving Forward podcast. It's Thursday, November 14th. Whether you're joining us live or listening on one of our 18 platforms, including Wreaths Across America Radio, where we broadcast every Tuesday evening from 7 to 8 p.m. Central Time. We appreciate your support. Throughout the show, we invite you to share your comments and questions at any time. Your engagement fuels our discussion and helps us navigate the world of transportation and logistics together. Today, I'm happy to welcome Samantha Jones. Like many in the logistics field, Samantha discovered this path unexpectedly. And what a discovery it's been. With 6 years in the industry, she's achieved some significant milestones. Samantha founded Samantha Jones Consulting, where she helps brokerages, carriers, and logistics providers not just grow, but grow sustainably. And I love that, sustainably. Her focus is on implementing innovative sales strategies, building brand visibility, and providing sustainable revenue growth. Samantha's expertise spans working with some of the largest supply chains in the nation, and she's a recognized speaker, writer, an advocate for women and young professionals in logistics. Samantha, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm happy to be here.
It's wonderful to have you here, and I don't know why I'm tongue-tied. I was recording something. Maybe it's because I was recording something beforehand, and it took me like 20 takes, which never happens, and it's just rolling into today. So
I'll make you feel better real quick, because I just spoke at the GOC Inland Distribution Conference, and we had done like multiple rounds of prep, but I had podcasted right before, and I had a guest on called Matt, walked up like first thing out of my mouth to kick off the panel, introduced my speaker, Mike, as Matt, and like messed up his name. That was like the easiest part like of this whole thing, and I just butchered his name right off the bat. So it happens to everyone, and definitely myself.
The funny part is I say that exact same opening every week, and I've done that. This is, I think, our 50th episode. So that started, I started saying that maybe episode 20. So that's 30 times. I have never screwed up the beginning of that.
And you're actually doing great, because, 1 out of 30 is really good odds.
Yeah, exactly. So not to mention all the rest of the time. Very rare. But all right, well, let's jump into it. A lot of people know who you are. You have you've spoken. You have Meet Me for Coffee. You're easy to find. So we don't need to spend a lot of time in who Samantha Jones is, unless that's where I think we just let this episode kind of go where it goes. You and I haven't had a lot of time to dive in and just chat, because whenever we're around one another, we're at a conference and we have 10 million things going on. So
yeah.
So it's great that we can sit here and chat. But what initially drew you into logistics, and what made you stay in logistics?
Yeah, that's a good question. What drew me in initially was a job with benefits for a soon-to-be college grad. So nothing too out of the ordinary, I don't think there. I was actually scooped up at a career fair while I was still in my senior year, actually junior year, I think, at Kansas State University, where I graduated. Go Cats. And so just was like, okay, it was an operational heavy role for entry-level role with ABF Freight, actually, parent company ArcBest. And I had studied operations management in school. That was my major, and it felt like a good fit. And so that's how I got my start in the industry. The only thing that derailed the operations side and pushed me into sales so quickly was having my son. shortly after, actually shortly before. So I had my son after taking the job offer, but 5 months before starting in operations, and just having, juggling a newborn with 24/7 distribution center schedules was really difficult. So transitioned into sales, and that's kind of it. The rest was history from there. So what kept me is, I actually remember the initial adjustment going from operations for LTL. We were just like LTL, LTL, LTL. And then moving into sales was like, holy smokes, like this thing's so much bigger than I ever realized. Because when I went into sales for ArcBest, we were selling everything: truckload, drayage, intermodal, international, supply chain optimization strategies, warehousing, like it, as $5 billion companies do. So um,
Right.
I realized at that time how big this industry was, how complex it was, and how necessary it was. And made it, through my first year of sales or so, a couple of years, and then the pandemic hit, and then everyone gained an increased, I think, appreciation for the industry throughout that time when we saw it actually like break, like the supply chain broke, and we all had to figure out how to fix it and move forward. That was also really fun and really engaging, and I think really helped me to just continue to understand how dynamic it was, and that's also probably what's kept me here. Is I am a fast paced person. I am a go go go. I am bored after a year of anything that stays the same for too long, and so it's been a really good fit for my just my personality type. I think my tendency to get too bored with things that are mundane over a period of time. And so it's never failed me when I have asked it to present me with a new challenge or a new opportunity. It's always come through and delivered that for me. So I think that's why I'm still here.
Yeah, no, I think we have the same reasons that we ended up in similar roles. So, as much as my pathway to consulting was very much so for the same reasons, is eventually you solve the same problems enough where you just decide you're going to go help everyone else with all their problems, and
Yeah.
you want something new every day, or at least more frequently. So you start reaching out to other companies and solving their problems, and seeing new things. And eventually, I think I it's hard. I've lost count. It's somewhere around 13, 1400 carriers. Carriers and brokers that I've worked with directly, and I've probably walked into well over 2000 at this point in my career. But that's something that is valuable. But you 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 can only solve the same problem and work at one organization, at least in my mind, for so long. I get stagnant that at one point the problems aren't big enough for me anymore.
Yeah. I joke with people that I had a quarter life crisis because I was too young to become a midlife, right? But I had a quarter life crisis, not in necessarily a bad way, but I remember I had when I, started my first sales role in the industry, I said, okay, my 5-year goal is to go from a manager, the account manager role to a director role. That's, I have to work for that. And I attained it in like just under 2 years. And so when I accepted it, I was so excited and I got into that role, and then I'm sitting there as a director and I'm like, oh no. I was like, that's when it hit me, like, this is your spot for 5 to 7 years, and I was like, that terrified me because I knew that I that was gonna be hard to sit still for 5 to 7 years, right? No matter, how fun it was, and so, I didn't end up sitting still for 5 to 7 years. I ended up actually changing. I changed companies at that point, but went into a new adventure as a vice president of revenue, and then, um, after doing that, again, was able to, help co-found a business, and then after co-founding a brokerage, was able to found my own consulting business, and like you said, it's been very rewarding getting to work with, in just the little over a year that I've been doing consulting. I don't know the exact number. And mine's not as big as yours, but I think it's already been like 15 or more companies that I've worked with for most of them 6 months or 3 to 6 months each. And so it's been um, really fun to have an impact on, not just one organization, but work across multiple. And you gain a lot more insights and a lot more takeaways and experience a lot faster when you're doing that. Because each company I worked for prior to my consulting business, you're learning and you're growing, but you're having like that one experience within the confines of that service model, that offering, that industry that you service. And so being able to work with multiple companies at once has been uh, so great for just expanding
Right.
my understanding of the industry too.
And seeing how they interweave, and to the point, I've got a few years on you, so you'll catch up. So it'll just take a while. So it's a grind. It's a grind. But
Yep.
no, seeing how they interweave, that's one of the fun things as you get more and you interact with more organizations, and you walk into one place and then you walk into the next one, and you say, wow, that there's, and I don't like this word, but synergies between the two.
Yeah.
uh and you see that happen more and more and more, and how things can work together. How does your consulting approach differ for companies at different stages? So
Yeah.
looking from a startup to a more established organization, uh, how does your approach typically different between those variety of companies?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So number one, what I specifically consult on is sales. We call it sales and brand strategies. Strategy being a key word there because there's more to just like sales training is one thing, right? And that's actually part of what we do. Like we can sit and train people on how to cold call better or how to write a better email, but strategy being like the actual intentional, educated decision making that goes behind who are we reaching out to? How are we reaching out to them? Why are we reaching out to them? What is a good ICP fit for us and why? So it's the building, I call it. Like there's a lot of building in what we do, and so we have to build. We have to learn about your company, and then we do that discovery phase. We do a creation phase. We do an implementation, and then we do the training. So it's not just like we're not just coming in and saying we're gonna give me all your people in a class or whatever. We're gonna train them on cold calling. It's a lot more foundational than that. And so on that note, though, that's going to depend, like the size of the company is going to have a big impact on kind of where they're at in that um, business, but call it like self-discovery, like journey within their company. Sometimes we go into my smallest client is actually I've had a couple like startups who were the founder had previous experience, right? And so they had the funding and the backing to be able to have some consulting resources, which I think is actually a luxury when you're a smaller company. And so we really get to help shape like the narrative from the beginning. Like, how do you envision this going? Who do you want to work with? Why do you want to work with them? What's your story? What are you good at? Like, what's your experience here? And we get to kind of help shape and build on that. Other times we'll go into, a 50 to $60 million brokerage that already has several sellers. They already have obviously an established business presence going. And we're just trying to help them better identify where growth should come from. So, and based on that, like, do we stay within the niches you're in? Do we have what I call like kind of sister niches that you could easily expand into that you'd also be adding value in? And really, it's all about just kind of figuring out what resources they have. And that's a big thing that I talk about a lot is like, we want to do as much as we can with what you have today. Do you want to be the consultant that comes in and says, you need to go hire all these people and invest in all of this infrastructure to start getting some type of forward momentum? And so
So what I'm going to interrupt you real quick there. What do you mean by resources they have? So let's dive into
people,
that a little bit. Yeah,
people
fair
being
enough.
number
Okay.
one. So when we're in sales, a lot of times like, um, people and tools. I'll do two
Yep.
things. Number one is people, because even if you have some cool tools, like if you don't have someone willing to be in them and executing, then I'm up a creek without a paddle.
Right.
So we need we're looking at people resources. We have I actually am working with some technology companies as well, and so we have some that are like still very much in kind of like that founder led sales position, right? Where I think a lot of technology companies start a little slower on the dedicated
Right.
sales presence, especially when the product's strong. Um, and so while that's great, well, I actually believe there's very few people who could ever sell something better than the person who founded and created and built that. Um, Resources as far as time are tight. So I have to figure out how to maximize whatever it is that we can get from that person. 2 hours a day to focus on sales, and build a brand. And we have to take that and run as far as we can with it. And so that'll be a little bit different of a strategy as opposed to someone who has 6 to 10 sellers whose
Right.
full-time job is sales. And so then I have 6 to 10 people to work with to start getting creative. So we're talking, they're each putting in roughly 40 hours a week, and we have that. Brokerage models are interesting to see the differences, because if you have someone in cradle to grave, they're not selling 8 hours a day, and then they have pretty finite resources actually at some point to continue to bring on new business. And so we have to tackle that issue. And sometimes it's looks like hiring more of them so that you can keep growing, or it looks like giving them better efficiencies on how they're prospecting, how they're getting leads, how they're reaching out, so they can do more with the hour a day they're dedicating to that part of their role. So to me, when I say resources, it's mostly people. And then secondly, it's tools. And so like we recommend certain, I think I don't know what the word is, lead generation, but literally just
Sure.
contact information finders, right? Like that's what it really is.
Yeah, fair enough. So
So we have some of the partnerships with some of those companies that we prefer, and then like CRMs and whatever tools they're in. There's even some cool stuff that we've just started kind of keeping tabs on, in like the intent data side of things, and what that could potentially do.
So when you go into a company, and obviously the answer is always different, but when you go into a company and you look at the resources and you look at the people, um, everyone has a technology stack, and the technology stack is going to change based upon the size of the company.
Mm-hmm.
You look at the people though, what do you typically approach from a personal branding perspective?
Yeah. So I actually love this topic. I do sales. Like sales is what I love. I want to help people sell their service, sell their product, and grow their company through revenue acquisition, right? We call it sustainable because it has to be able to make money, which means
Right.
you get a bunch of money as a broker and then you're losing money to operate it. You're not actually making money. So that's not sustainable. But sales is what I love. That is my passion. I started when I was in sales growing a personal brand. I had no idea what a personal brand was. I didn't know that was really a thing or a word. I was just trying to make money in sales. So I started like networking, engaging in the LinkedIn space, putting content out there. I was actually writing what's now like the monthly truckload market update. I was like, even when I was in sales at ArcBest, I was like writing that in I was recording a video that would send to my clients each month. So there's been some version of that alive for like 3 years
Sure.
now or more. Um, and I did all of that to assist in revenue generation in sales outreach. It wasn't like focused on a brand. And so I love marketing. I actually, oddly enough, one of my clients, I work directly with the marketing team. That's who I'm working with. So I think that there is a lot of value in marketing. I tell people I am not in marketing. Like I don't really know a lot about the whole SEO space, like all of that. Even I love Kara. I think a lot of her and her company, she's amazing. Kara Smith Brown, and she wrote a
Mhm.
book and she does all this, and they're heavy in that intent data, and they're heavy in like signals. And while we maybe look at some of it that naturally pulls into our sales tools, like we're everything that happens after that point, right? That's sales.
Right.
So that's not something we play in. However, a brand, a personal brand specifically, in my mind, like is not, I can't separate it from sales. So we are using branding as a direct proponent to increase sales success. So something that like examples of services we do, we ghostwrite for executives. So quite a few executives at companies under our management for LinkedIn ghostwriting. And we communicate with them. They give the inputs into it. It's not like we're just making stuff up. We do have some company pages under management too. So I think like 4 or 5 company pages where we're helping to generate graphics and topics of discussion and video content or newsletters or whatever that is. And we look at that as like the supplemental piece to a sales outreach process that has to be there. Has to be there for the credibility when people go do their research, when they click your signature and go look at your profile, when they go look at your company's profile. It has to be there to give you that credibility as the person who they should want to take that meeting with or talk to. But then for people, for when you're selling and you have that personal brand presence, that's how you're going to help build that know, like, and trust that has to be there in a service-based industry before you're going to be able to have a successful business partnership with someone. And not everyone will do it. not everyone we give resources to or offer training to or resources to will want to lean into the social aspect of selling, social selling essentially. But it's something we highly promote and encourage to see like maximum success in this industry.
No, excellent, excellent point. When it comes to personal brand, I feel like regardless of even if sales, I feel like anyone that's customer facing needs to be aware of their personal brand and the way that they
Yeah.
present themselves to the industry. And, certainly from a sales perspective, if you're not focused on personal brand, you are missing out there. And I see so many people skipping out on that. It's sort of like your resume
Yeah.
today. You don't
Yeah.
need a resume. And from the sales side, if someone's coming into an organization, the first thing they do is look at your LinkedIn, and that's step one. But then, from a thought leadership standpoint, do you have any idea what you're talking about, and are you making any posts? Are you connected to anyone in the industry? Many people look at that. So,
I
um,
think if you want to be top, even top 10, top 5%, top 1%, but top 10% in sales, you have to figure out how to tap into a social aspect of it. And I
right,
say social, depending on what you're selling. Like if you're selling to shippers, I mean LinkedIn, because you're not gonna find your
yeah,
shippers really on Instagram. I'm sorry.
right,
So
right.
like maybe if you're selling tech to carriers and stuff, like they're actually Instagram, Facebook, like
Facebook, yep,
lots of carriers and stuff on those platforms. So it varies, but guess what? Spoiler alert, the same content you make for one platform perfectly post to all the other ones. So
yeah,
um but LinkedIn is just, I mean, it's definitely more professional. It's great for connecting with those decision makers. So why, if you know that, say, I'm going to throw out a number I feel is pretty accurate, 80% of decision makers with a manager level or higher have a LinkedIn profile. Most of the people who decide to hire you are a manager level or higher. Why wouldn't you be there? Like, it's the only place you
right.
can guarantee that a majority of your people who pull the trigger on a decision um, are active, even if it's like once a week, once a month, whatever. They're probably there in some capacity. And so I would just, say that, yeah, I think it's necessary to be a high performer. And I also know that there are people who have been in this industry for a long time and they've built up great books of businesses and they are like top percent sellers. But that was earned over time. And I'm not saying that
Right.
there's any cheat code to sales per se, but maybe there is. Like, if you could figure out how to tap into LinkedIn, it doesn't take decades to be able to position as a trusted industry resource and partner. So I mean, speaking from experience.
Yeah, it's absolutely true. I mean, I've been in the industry closing in on 30 years, and I have many, many relationships, and that is what drives me. I do not identify up until probably 5 years ago, I do not identify as a salesperson,
Yeah.
and I probably do now.
Mhm.
But I was a horrible net new salesperson. I was an absolutely stellar account manager,
Yeah.
but I could not go sell new accounts at all. I was horrible at it.
Yeah.
It's a little different now, but I've learned very much so on how to use social media and whatnot to be my lead generation, because
Mhm.
I'm not the best guy to go knock on a door. And that's actually the era that I grew up in, was the cold call era. I mean,
Mhm.
dial for dollars. That's
Yes.
literally what I grew up in. Was you had to make phone calls, try to get invited in, whatnot. I was not good at that. So I seem to be a little better at the social media side of things. So we're so that's probably when I transitioned to identifying more as a salesperson. So and LinkedIn, I agree completely. If you're in corporate sales in any way, shape, or form, you should have that profile. If
Yeah.
you don't need it today, you may need it tomorrow. Your customer may or may not be on LinkedIn. We've found that many, many carriers and many, many small brokers may not have much of a presence on LinkedIn, or just a small presence of their company is on LinkedIn. And a lot of them are on Facebook. They may have thousands of followers on Facebook or Instagram and have virtually no following on LinkedIn. But somewhere down the road, you may need that LinkedIn profile. So don't wait to build it because it takes a while. So
Yeah, definitely.
uh so moving on to a little bit of a different topic, actually somewhat of the same, but how do you help companies differentiate their brand in such a competitive market? I think I've heard you talk about this a little bit because everybody is doing, in essence, somewhat of the same thing.
Mhm.
Actually, I think you posted on this just today in response to a Uber freight message, or maybe someone did.
Yeah,
Um,
it
but
was me.
how would you answer that?
Um, that was me. That comment was a shortened version of my soapbox. I'll try not to get all the way up on it. Um, More directed towards brokers, right? And I don't just work with brokers, but this is a good example if we're talking about brokerage. If you're a broker, the only thing that you have, like the only thing that you have to offer is trucks. Like you're moving something. You don't own trucks, so you have to get trucks to move them. And I'm purposely making this sound simple because that is actually like how simplistic this industry is. If you are a broker, you are finding a shipper a truck to move something. And if you're a broker and you are going to DAT to find a truck to move something, why are you different than the 30,000 other brokers who are going to DAT in the same market, looking at the same truck postings, posting the same lane? Like, so then that's where I said in this comment, oh, but our service is so good. And I'm like, okay, well, ultimately, that carrier that you just secured is the same carrier that anybody else could have secured. And visibility and tracking is like table stakes just about these days, right? So providing updates or visibility isn't really competitive advantage anymore. Um, Having a person who's going to answer the phone at any hours of the day, thanks to nearshore staffing especially, isn't really a competitive advantage anymore. So I don't really know like where these people are coming up with this idea that you are so unique and you are so worth any type of premium, especially maybe you're worth market rate, maybe you're worth like the low end market rate if that's your service model. So I don't say this to be cynical. I love brokerage. I believe brokerage has a permanent place in our industry. I believe it provides a valuable service that will never be replaced. It's funny because like we actually see people try to replace it with like technology, or I've seen
Right.
technology companies, selling to shippers like, oh, you can connect directly with carriers to move your stuff through this platform. And I'm like, so now you're the broker. Like
Right.
you're a shipper and a broker now. You
Yep.
have two
That's
jobs.
that's not gone so well. Yeah.
So just there is so much value in a broker, but you do have to differentiate yourself and you have to figure out what are we actually good at? Like what do we really do well? And in my opinion, that should always involve cultivating relationships with a unique set of carriers that are working with you. Sure, maybe they're like doing their own thing directly with some shippers. Maybe they're even working with a couple other brokers, but in some way, shape, or form, these carriers aren't out on these load boards. The majority of their freight is running exclusive to their couple of strong partners and their dedicated clients. And so when you provide carrier capacity like that, that's what I call net new capacity to the shippers network, because anybody could bring them somebody from the load board that day that's in their market. But not everybody can offer them that carrier because that carrier is not out there publicly. And so that to me is the value from an operational standpoint. And then, yeah, there's a lot of other cool things you can do operationally within a brokerage to provide great service. Number one, having really stellar sales and account management talent is important. So to me, having the best talent is a competitive advantage because this is a service industry. People make services possible. They're what make them great. So you want to be able to have the best talent. How do you get the best talent? You have something worth working for. Like, if you
Yeah.
want a really good
Sure.
seller, you need to have a product that they wanna sell. And I say product, but even if you're a broker, like, I'm a good seller. I can sell brokerage services if I know it's a good brokerage, and I know what a good brokerage is. So if you try to interview me to hire me, I'm going to be like, "No, not trying to sell this model into a shipper, like, it's gonna fail." Or even if I succeed, it's gonna flop, and I'm gonna look like the liar because the service didn't hold up to
Right.
what I sold.
Well,
And so
success attracts talent in general. So if you're being
100%.
successful, you're gonna attract successful people, and that's gonna grow your business. So
100%. Yep. And so then another thing I think is going to be like imperative and necessary is correctly deploying automation within your operations. We already have too many people too far down this road to turn back. We're not going to go
right,
back, and they're going to be successful, and they already are proving success. So when you see brokers that are able to automate certain functions within pricing and quoting, even like load creation, carrier matching, appointment scheduling automation,
yep,
where I mean, I just did a study with one of my clients who does appointment scheduling automation, which I think is absolutely amazing and fantastic. And I've no idea where that was when I was back in brokerage.
yeah,
Um,
it wasn't there yet.
yeah, it
Yeah.
wasn't. It is. That's
It's
true.
so new. Yeah,
It's
I
very
assume they were
new.
on queued,
Um, no, I
or
work with
was
a
that?
company called Bigger Picture. So
Oh,
they're
okay, awesome.
fantastic, and they we like saw like I saw like a case study, right? And essentially what we were able to figure out is that with the amount of appointments that were being scheduled through email processes or portal processes, it was the equivalent of 13 full-time employees each month.
Yeah,
And the system reduces that workload by 80%. So
that's
do you fire 13 people? No, nobody's
no, you
advocating for that.
reassign them,
But if you
right?
have talented people, none of them were doing 100% just appointments, right? So you're giving that time back into account management, back into sales, back into carrier relationships, whatever it
Right.
is. So people who are achieving like these next levels of automation are actually like reinvesting in themselves through the efficiencies that they're gaining. Also, when you gain increased efficiencies, it costs you less dollars essentially to cover a load, right? So you become more aggressive. You have 30 people who can do the work of 60 people. You have less fixed operational costs. So you're pricing better. You're more competitive in your marketplace.
So we're gonna come back in 2 minutes and 15 seconds after this commercial and talk a little bit more automation. And at the end of this, I want you to make sure that I get the name of that company again that's doing that automation.
Yeah.
So we work with a lot of companies that automate things, and that's one that I hadn't heard of. So
Yeah.
hang tight. We'll be back in 2 minutes.
Awesome.
My mom and dad's favorite time of the year was right now. Every year we had one of these and we tried to fill it full of toys for underprivileged children at the time of Christmas. We've been very successful in years past, collecting in upwards of $10,000 worth of toys for them children. So I ask you this year, can you give me one toy, two toys, three toys, four toys, $5, $10, $50, whatever is in your budget to help me fill this up and deliver the joy of the season to those that might not see it?
Here's how you can help. Drop off a new unwrapped toy or check at any Kottke Trucking terminal. Please make checks payable to Kottke Trucking with trucks and toys in the memo line. You can also drop off toys or checks at any freight movement event on or before December 5th. If you can't make it to a Kottke Trucking terminal, please reach out to sales@glcs.net for alternative options. If your fleet's downtime looks like chaos, you're missing out on GLCS. In the fast-paced world of trucking and logistics, time is everything. Meet GLCS, your expert partner in managed IT services. We integrate seamlessly with your team, bringing seasoned IT professionals with deep transportation and logistics expertise. Imagine your software updates running smoothly, complex issues resolved quickly, and operations humming with efficiency. GLCS has your back. Our support doesn't just fix problems, it prevents them. With our industry connections and proactive approach, we keep your trucks rolling and your brokers working. Think of us as the added resource your company needs to unleash its full potential. Visit glcs.net today and keep your business driving forward. GLCS, where efficiency meets expertise.
Remember,
honor, teach.
give the gift of remembrance. Sponsor a $17 Veterans Wreath for an American hero. Learn more at wreathsacrossamerica.org.
And we're back. So getting back to automation, I was speaking to someone recently who had said, one of their customers had used their service to automate 100 different functions within their organization, and he was absolutely astounded that they had done that. And then he started thinking, what absolutely happens to those that aren't automating anything?
Mhm.
And I think there's so
Mhm.
many organizations out there that are not looking at automation yet. And I'm not talking about deploying AI necessarily. I'm talking about simply using machine learning and any other function, not to go deep on the technology side, just simply looking at automating tasks. So
Yep.
we talked about appointment automation. That's a great application that didn't exist 3 or 4 years ago for the most part, in the
Yeah.
fashion that we see it existing today.
Yeah.
And it's someone that just sat down and said, "This is a massive time sink." And I've been in the organizations that have 40 or 50 people that are just managing appointments.
Mhm.
Large enterprise organizations, and that's a huge undertaking. Not to mention all kinds of other functions that are out there. Um, that's certainly, automation I think is going to be massive. I think, for even for smaller companies, just starting out, as you look at, or not even just starting out, those that are not well established yet, but maybe are going to go through a growth phase here as we start stabilizing as an industry, looking at automation instead of addition of headcount,
Yeah.
taking those paths. So
Yeah. No, absolutely. So I actually, my long-term theory here is that, specifically, I guess in brokerage, but I would say trucking too. Um, I think there'll be a reduction in brokerages. Like, I don't think the
yeah,
number of brokerages that we have is sustainable. And I don't mean that by saying, oh, there's too many in the industry and like they need to leave. It's just that like they're going to be exited because they cannot compete with the people who have already like got too far ahead, essentially. And I think we'll always have a couple brackets because there's always going to be small brokers. You're really we call it I call it lifestyle brokers, which is like you have one maybe employee, two, you have someone in nearshore staffing that helps you, but like you're running your own book of business, you're an agent, you're doing something, whatever that is. And those people, typically the type of people they're partnering with, it's super niche. You find your groove, you find your relationships, and you stay pretty small. So there's not really a whole lot to automate. But you're always gonna have that. I think what we're gonna like start doing is getting rid of some of these. Like we already don't. If you look at how many brokerages are over $100 million, it's not a long list.
right.
So I think that actually might shrink a little bit, and then I think you're gonna see fewer people attain that benchmark because it's gonna be more competitive when you start getting into that mid-size and larger cap in space to compete with someone who is already doing it. Like they already had the ability and the opportunity to invest in automation when it was newer, and they did, and they got ahead and they absorbed more volume from other people who didn't. And so they kind of start taking that market share. And not only are they just growing volume, but like they're doing it well. So it's making money, it's sustainable. Um, and I think that's very likely an outcome that we could see happen. It will be harder to start to like displace those type of companies when you're competing against them for the same books of business.
I agree on the pure brokerages, on your point of view with the pure brokerages. I think what'll be interesting is those that have assets. I feel like we're going to see carriers that some of the higher performing organizations are going to be those, in the past, to set this up a little differently. In the past, we've seen carriers that are more carrier focused and have a smaller brokerage, and they're using
Yeah,
that as overcapacity strategy.
for sure.
They're overbooking in an area and using the brokerage to level that out. I feel like maybe I'm a 200 truck fleet and I'm doing X amount of revenue. My brokerage was a third of that in revenue in the past. In the future, I feel like that brokerage is going to be even revenue with the truck line. And that organization is going to start to become extremely strong because it's still nimble. due to its size, but yet it has performance capability on up and down market scenarios where it wouldn't in the past. There's just a lot of our customers talk about this, and we see many of them starting to move to these strategies, and have been moving to the strategies for a few years, but it's been difficult with the freight market we've been in to capitalize on it. So
I would
what's your
say,
thoughts on that?
well, I love your stance. I love your opinion on it. I love that you think that those brokerages should grow. I don't know why they shouldn't. I think if you can run a 200 truck fleet, you should easily be able to run a $50 million plus brokerage
Right.
in no time. I don't see it happen. I've talked with multiple, actually. I've had multiple companies approach me, talk to me about their brokerage division, that they're a carrier, they're a 100-year-old carrier, they're a 20-year-old carrier. And they're like, yeah, we've had a brokerage for about 5 years. I'm like, oh, that's fantastic. How big is it? And they're like, we got up to 10. We're back down to like 5 million. And I'm like, respectfully, I can grow a $5 million brokerage in a few months without any trucks. So it's like,
Right.
there's always, it seems like a failure to launch to me when you have the asset guys trying to grow the brokerage side. Shameless plug, if anyone listening is in that position, I would love to talk to you guys, because I think there's so much upside potential to be able to grow a brokerage when you own a fleet, that I think that they're in a great position to do it. I think what they're going to have to realize is that you're going to have to invest in and trust the right people to lead that, because it is different than running a fleet.
It is. It's a
Different sell.
different sales strategy, and it's different customers.
Yeah.
And when you leverage that appropriately, you see great success, but it is not the same customer base. So
It could be the same customer base, maybe, in that like your fleet's already running with them. You need to know how to go in and say, hey, I'm the brokerage division of this. Here's what we would like to start doing and partnering with you on. And like, you just have to be skilled in handling those conversations. And I think people just get confused and get tripped up because you go into it thinking this is going to be an easy sell because we have trucks and everybody wants someone with trucks. And then next thing you know, your broker or sales rep selling the trucks. And it's like, no, that's not what, that is off limits. That is not what we're supposed to be doing.
That's where I'm going with it. Is it's not the same pitch. It's not the same discussion. And it's not the same. You're not selling the exact same thing. So, and you can't, or you're going to end up with a $5 or $10 million brokerage, and you're going to struggle with it because you're not going to be able to perform. So,
yeah, absolutely.
So you advocate a lot for young people in logistics. What advice would you give to someone starting out in transportation?
I think my favorite piece of advice to anyone starting in transportation, and not just to young people, but especially to young people, is that from my experience and what I've witnessed for myself and for many other people, you will get as much out of this industry as you are willing to put into it. And so like we don't care. The industry collectively does not care your age or anything else. If you can produce results, if you can perform, you are rewarded for that performance. And I think naturally we're a very fast-paced, innovative, I think people say like this industry isn't innovative, but if someone brings like a new idea to the table and like, I think it's going to work better, there's a lot of receptivity to that. So I would argue that we're not innovative. It doesn't have to be like some convoy type idea to be initially considered innovative, right? Like it just, whatever makes things better. So in sales, especially, that's easy. Like you have to innovate pretty much every dang year at this point in sales to stay relevant. And so if you're willing to come in and work hard and invest, you're going to get out of it what you're willing to put into it. And I really do believe that. So I love it. I love to see young people getting involved in logistics. I love to see growing supply chain and logistics programs at universities, helping people find their way. I would say that a lot of college programs are geared towards pushing people into what we would call the shipper side of the industry, right? It's a lot of like Lean Six Sigma, manufacturing, supply chain related courses. I think most people in logistics programs are like, I can't wait to be a freight broker. So I do encourage
they are not. Yeah.
When I talk to them, I actually encourage them to explore the provider side, because you work with so many shippers. So if that is ultimately your goal, is to go work on the production side or the manufacturing side or distribution side, go work with a company who's going to work with 100 of those companies, so that you can like really understand it and see it from a different viewpoint before you switch back into that side of things. But I bet you won't switch back because I bet you're going to love it. So.
Yeah, I've talked with the Minnesota Trucking Association. They have a program kind of talking about all logistics jobs, because everyone does come through the supply chain programs with a plan in mind. And,
Yeah.
there's really not a pathway. I talk about this all the time. There's really not a pathway into brokerage or trucking.
Sure.
There's just
Yeah.
not.
Unless it's like a driving program, I guess. Like if you want to be a driver in trucking.
There's not even a pathway there because you have to wait till you're 21. So for the most part,
Oh,
other
I
than a certain
didn't know
program
that,
going
actually.
on. So you graduate from high school, you have to go have another career, and then you come back in. So, and I driver shortage discussion aside, which I don't want to have, there's where I don't like the industry right now is just simply that there is no career path that's linear for drivers. And,
Yeah.
so there's that. And then there's no, hey, I want to go to school to learn how to run trucks. And yet there's, so many people, what is it? 3.5 million people associated. Or actually is it five? I got the number. I'd have to click a few things, but so many people associated with running just trucking. I think it's 5. Let me, I'll pull it up as we're sitting here talking. But a substantial amount of people just associated with the over-the-road trucking part of the industry. Yet we really don't have a career path that goes through it. All of us, not all of us, but most.
Let me touch on this. I tell people all the time when it comes to sales for carriers, for tech companies, for brokers in our space, we have two primary problems in sales that I have to figure out how to address when I'm working with a client. Number one is you don't have the resources, strategy, direction, tools, whatever it is to properly equip and maximize the talent you already have. That's problem number one. Problem number two is that you don't know how to get good talent, or you're unable to get good talent, because what's most common, in my opinion, is good experienced talent is expensive, and that might be really hard for a growing smaller brokerage to buy in. And number two, there's high risk to that because a lot of good talent never ends up being good talent when it gets to you. So you might invest $100 and something thousand salary in someone who doesn't produce like you expected them to produce. But then the other problem is you're like, okay, well, that's fine. Look at all these young people going into sales programs or logistics programs in college. I'm going to go hire them. But then you realize that even your sales manager or your VP of sales is running 40% of your book of business, and they don't have time to sit with that person adequately to teach them the industry from the ground up, to teach them sales. So that's kind of really what I'm more passionate about, and like what we try to help. I've had a couple of my clients over the course of working with me take advantage of that and hire very green sales reps, because I was able to devote our resources into training and developing those people for several months to get them off the ground and start producing. And so that's something that we don't see in small to medium-sized companies is training programs and trainers and sales managers who have no book of business, and their job is to, invest and devote in their time into these entry-level people. So I have a very firmly held belief that young and experienced green talent can be your top producers in just a couple of years if you bring them in. And you're going to have a competitive advantage in that you got that person, not one of your competitors. But the problem is always, it's a resource problem on the training and development side. And that's kind of like one of those gaps that we try to sit in. I try to sit in to help people be able to take advantage of that talent pool.
I agree with that. You can certainly turn those people and train them and mold them into, we see it. That's what some of the larger brokerages do. That's somewhat, some of the larger carriers do that. You just have to have, all of them. Some of the larger carriers have that as well. So Missy just put up 8.4 million people. I actually just looked it up while we were talking. 8.4 million people are associated with trucking. Just in general. So
my friend Cody just dropped in a comment too. I said transportation services equated to 6.7% of the nation's GDP in 2023, and yet there's no dedicated school. Pretty crazy.
Right.
I agree. Right. And not even like school, but like you're hard pressed to even find like dedicated companies to like pulling these people out and like bringing them in and doing training and preparing. And so there's definitely opportunity, which again, it's like, that's where I sit in. That's the opportunity gap that I'm sitting in. But yeah, I mean,
there's a lot of opportunity. So a lot of there always has been, and we've all fallen into our roles. So for the most part, and you have to go out and you have to target people to bring them into the role. And
yeah.
It's just a huge opportunity for the industry, and we'll see what if somebody figures that one out. It's a Will Jenkins thing, maybe. So
Yeah. There you go.
so what's next for you and Samantha Jones Consulting?
Oh, well, let's see. We have, I will be on the road not until February. I'll be at Manifest. So if anybody
Yep.
wants to attend Manifest, and I'd love for you to say hi there. I do have a discount code to save you $200 on your registration. So you could message me for that. Samantha Jones Consulting is, chugging right along. We're going to keep doing our thing, helping companies. Actually, you know, I'm excited for the well, not dramatic change in the market, but I think we're going to see
Yeah.
bit of improvement in the next year. And so while I feel like we've had a lot of clients coming to us because they're like, we're not getting anything, we're stuck, we're this and whatnot, I've also not seen a big willingness to invest in hiring sales talent in this market. Not because you wouldn't be great, like it'd be nice if you could, right? But maybe you're tight on resources. A lot of brokers and carriers have been tight on resources. So I'm excited to see kind of a return in confidence to be bringing on new talent. We love to work with talent, new talent, experienced talent, whatever talent. We love to just help them
Just
create
talent in general.
processes. We also really like what I try to stress to people, and this is the direction we're moving, is we're trying to create the foundation of a successful sales strategy and program. So when you are trying to headhunt those good, you know, top talent, when you do want them to feel like they want to work within your organization, we're trying to make sure that companies have the framework to attract those people and then to help them get up and going and producing very quickly. So that's really what we like call it, building the infrastructure of what you need to be able to take advantage of the market. And I know that it's been an undesirable freight market. I don't really care. I've still seen and been a part of millions of dollars of growth during the last few years. So, I mean, there's always opportunity, and that's what we're helping people untap. However, sales is always more fun when the opportunity is a little bit more frequent or a little bit easier to come by.
Easier.
So, yeah, we're looking forward to that.
It's always a lot more fun when it's easier, but I've seen plenty of people excel through this, and I just don't accept people who just accept the loss. So I never accept that. You can always struggle your way through it.
Yeah. And to that point, if I could be a little bit judgmental here for a second, if you're like an executive, an owner, a senior leader at a company, and you're someone in a leadership position at your sales has just been saying, well, it's the market. Well, it's the market. It's just been a tough market. Like, I need you to take like a really good look at what's going on within that sales organization, because we could turn around and point to 10 other companies who have grown millions of dollars. That is profitable. There are companies out there that have done it profitably. There's companies who have done it unprofitably, I'm sure, but that have done that in the last couple of years. And so you can't sit here and say like it's impossible. And maybe it's not sales, actually. Also be willing to look into that and have like an open mind, because maybe you have a problem operationally that's hindering the successful sale of what you're trying to do too. So I would just say, though, if you're hearing like it's the market, that's why we haven't grown, I mean, I'm just going to have to politely say BS, because there's plenty of people.
Right. If you're good, you're good. That's what happens. So absolutely. So I'm going to wrap this up a little bit, go through a bunch of events. Feel free to provide color commentary as we go through it. If anybody has comments for Samantha or anything else, feel free to shoot them over as we're going through. So, and then we'll make sure we get your socials and however people can get a hold of you here at the end. So next week we are talking technology with a crew from GLCS. We got a whole bunch of people that are going to be on next week. Specifically, we're going to be talking about the rapid fire demos that are going to come off of F3. I'm going to sit through all of them, get some videos, get some notes. It's one of my favorite things about F3. So stay tuned next Thursday for that. The following week, we're taking off for Thanksgiving. It's pretty rare that we take a whole week off. I haven't done that since July 4th, and I'm looking forward to it. The following week, I'm sure Samantha knows what that's like. So the following week, first week of December, we have Tom McLeod on. Super excited about that. He's an absolute legend. Very much so looking forward to talking with Tom McLeod. I always enjoy my conversations with him. Upcoming shows following that, we have a cybersecurity panel with Ben Barnes, the CIO of McLeod Software, and Wade Anderson, the CIO of Bay and Bay. We may add on a couple more people to that as time goes on. If you'd like to be on the show, please feel free to reach out to us at drivingforward@GLCS. We'd love to hear your story. We brought this up on one of the commercials. It's called Truck and Toys, the toy drive. It's actually run by the Minnesota Trucking Association. So don't, if you have any donations you'd like to make towards this, you're in the Minnesota area, you want to make the donations, otherwise feel free to reach out to us. There's multiple locations that you can make donations to, but any Kottke Trucking terminal, we've partnered with Kottke Trucking on this, but any Kottke Trucking terminal can take a check or a toy. If that's difficult for you, feel free to reach out to us at sales@glcs.net for an alternative option. Then there's 2 freight movement events coming up, one in Chattanooga and one in Eagan, Minnesota. And we're happy to accept anything there, and we'll make sure that Kyle and his team get that. All right. We have, don't forget that it's a significant month for Wreaths Across America as well. December 14th is National Wreaths Across America Day. If you're interested in supporting or joining, visit Wreaths Across America. Wreaths Across America. I'm still not reading very well today. I'm doing this. If you're interested in joining or supporting, visit Wreaths Across America website at www.wreathsacrossamerica.org for more detail. November 18th, Whitney Johnson Cowell is hosting a coffee meetup in Chattanooga at the Frothy Monkey. Join Whitney, Jenny, myself, and Susan Mayo. Actually, yeah, it's a whole bunch of people that are going to be there. Don't you love that name, Frothy Monkey?
That is fun.
Every time we do these coffee meetups, they're always a interesting name. So if you're at Freight Waves, Festival of Freight, reach out. We'd love to chat with you and learn what you're doing. A year ago, I went to Freight Waves saying it's the last conference of the year, and I was quickly corrected by Grace Sharkey stating it's not a conference, it's a festival. And I deeply appreciated that. I changed my position on the festival, and we'd love to hear what new and exciting things that your companies are up to. Please feel free to reach out. We'd love to get together with you. Venture 53 is partnered with Freight Movement for the F3 after party on November 20th from 9 p.m. to midnight at the Boneyard in Chattanooga. We'll have cold drinks, karaoke, and we're letting loose with some pretty cool people. The Boneyard's a pretty cool venue. If you haven't been there, we're looking forward to seeing you. Sign up is limited. Actually, I think we're approaching the limit. So definitely get your sign up in soon. We're probably going to go over a little bit. You can sign up at Freight Movement, fr8mvmt.com. In the upper right-hand side, you'll see events, or go to Freight Movement on LinkedIn, and you should be able to see the event there. We have so many events coming up. You can tell it's the holiday. So Freight Movement's also hosting an event in Eagan, Minnesota. It's the Frosty Freight event on December 5th at Lone Oak Grill from 6 to 9 p.m. Christmas and holiday themed. What we don't have up here is Bring Your Ugly Christmas Sweater. We're excited to partner with our sponsors, William and Associates and Transport USA. We'll have more to come on this, but I think we're going to have what's it called? I'm trying to remember what the people who draw the funny pictures. Why can I not think? My brain's gone today. So anyway, somebody just caricaturist. Yeah, there we go. So It's
That's a
just a
hard word
bad
to
thing.
say. I can't
So,
say that word,
yeah, I
actually.
can't
Sorry.
spell it. I tried spelling it.
Yeah.
So, all right. If you're going to Manifest, I'll plug Samantha instead of Freight Movement on this one. So, how do we get people to book with you on Manifest?
I have a link. It should be up on a couple recent posts, like one of the most recent posts right now on my personal LinkedIn. So I would love to connect with anybody on LinkedIn. I'm on there quite often. So go over to my profile, and then there's a post that says I'm speaking at Manifest. It has the link in the post to register. Just automatically applies a $200 discount there. We also have it in the comments on all of our recent podcast episodes too with that link.
And also, you said beforehand you're looking for people you have 30-minute segments that you're
Yeah,
working
so
with companies on.
we are working on finalizing our slots for sponsorship for the podcast. So I host the Meet Me for Coffee podcast. We're an official media sponsor with Manifest, so we will be there creating podcast content. And so we are looking for about 5 more companies to close sponsorship slots with us on that. And so what that looks like is if you sponsor, someone from your company gets to come on to the show. We get to talk about more about what you guys do, what you're good at, what you know, what's going on in the industry, give us some good insights. And then we get to turn over some cool short clips and different types of content back to you. But then we get to run that on the Meet Me for Coffee podcast channels as Manifest content coverage. And so we get to reach a great audience there too with your content. So that's a little bit more about that. And if anyone's interested in that, just shoot me a message on LinkedIn.
Perfect. So where can people find you?
LinkedIn. That's my one and only. I'm not a good Instagram or anything else. So I'm on LinkedIn at Samantha Jones. That Meet Me for Coffee is my background there, my slogan. I also do have a website if anyone's interested in learning more about the consulting work that I do. That would be Connect SJC for Samantha Jones Consulting. So connectsjc.com. You guys can go there. There's a form you can fill out. You can book a time with me on a Calendly. And whatever else, read more about our services, some client testimonials, and all the fun stuff.
Perfect. Well, Samantha, this has been great. The hour went by super fast.
Yeah.
As usual, but with any guest that's engaging, it's always a ton of fun. So appreciate your time, and we'll wrap this up. So stay curious, stay informed, and keep pushing the boundaries of what's possible. Until next time, drive forward with purpose and innovation. Thanks for coming, Samantha. Appreciate it. Everybody have a great week.
Thank you.